Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Hi, and welcome to Self-Improvement Atlas, the Personal Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm Marie Stella, your host from Melbourne, Australia. Let's start the show. Hello and welcome back to Self-Improvement Atlas, the Personal Science Insights podcast. In business, metrics and analytics often reign supreme, but what is the role of intuition? We apply intuition to our daily lives, so why shouldn't we apply intuition to our business strategy? And what does it do for our personal growth? To answer these questions, we're speaking to business strategist Laetitia Andrac, who is a best-selling author as well as an accredited executive and holistic life coach. Hi, Laetitia. How are you doing today?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me, Marie.
Yeah, thank you for taking your time to spend with us today. So before we begin, I'm really curious to know from what you've seen, what is the benefit of defying conventional logic and applying intuition instead to business strategy?
It's actually the missing piece. A lot of people look at business from a data angle, a data perspective, what has been done before and how can I replicate that for my business. But actually, if you start tuning in with your intuition and leaning into that whisper that is within you, that is based on your own subconscious, your own experiences, your own feelings and perceptions, this is when you truly innovate. And this is when you disrupt an industry. So for me, it's really the missing link. A lot of entrepreneurs forget to tap into that, but those who are the most successful, like Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, openly say that they are intuitive.
Right. That's a great preface for our topic for today. But before we get further into detail, we like to get to know you better. So this is Have You Met Laetitia? And my first question for you is, what do you like to do in your spare time?
Reading. I'm a bookworm. I've always been a bookworm. And you will find me sitting either in nature or in my favorite armchair at home, reading a book.
So what type of genres of books do you often gravitate towards?
I love to read biography and I love to read self-development, self-help book. And I also love to read books that are about ancient culture or traditions.
And what are some of the most memorable books that you've read?
So recently I have read Shining Bright from Julia Baird, How Grace Transformed Everything. And it is truly beautiful. If you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend it.
What did you like about that book?
The fact that she explained grace in a way that transcends religion and that is within us in every context and in every decision we make.
That does sound really interesting indeed. And as for other forms of media, do you listen to podcasts or watch films at all?
Yes, I do. I love watching movies. I'm French and I love to watch French movies as I live now in Australia. It's a way for me to stay connected with my own culture. And I also love to listen to podcasts. I'm a bit of a geek, so I listen to podcasts about deep entrepreneur journey. And I also love to listen to podcasts that are more mystical and spiritual.
Mm-hmm. And for those who have not really watched any French movies before, what movies would you recommend?
Amélie is very beautiful with Jan Tiersen soundtrack. People will love that, and it's going to take them in Paris through the magical landscape of Paris.
Oh, that sounds really nice. I've always wanted to go to Paris. It's such an interesting place, just apart from, well, the romance that's painted about Paris in a lot of the mainstream media is not really what gets really drives me to go to Paris, but more of just the history that's in Paris. there's so much of it, and the culture as well. So is that what Emily actually depicts, or is there something else there?
So Amelie shows you a part of Paris that maybe you won't see if you go as a tourist, but it's more showing you how different things can happen in life when you're not necessarily prepared for it. So it's more about the synchronicity and the serendipity in life. It's very beautiful. The music, the soundtrack will transport you.
Yeah, I really love that. And you did mention that you're a bit of a geek when it comes to podcasts. So what are you listening to at the moment?
So I am loving to listen to the 4 hours podcast around startup and stories of startup. So that's one of my favorite. And right now I'm missing the name. So I'm searching it for you, which is in my favorite podcast. So Acquired. Have you listened to Acquired podcast?
No,
So
I've not
it's
heard of it.
wonderful. They go for 4 hours around the history of how Hermes was created, how AWS was created, how Nintendo was created. So it's 4 hours geeking out on the history of many startups, scale up, but also well-established brands. It's very powerful episode. So yeah, I love to listen to that. Very geeky,
Yeah.
Acquired.
That sounds fascinating. I love watching YouTube videos about startups and how different major companies got their starts as well. And it's always so interesting that you never guess where they started in the first place and how things took a turn. So it's really interesting to learn more about these major companies. It's like you really never would have guessed. So what are some of the biggest takeaways that you have learned from these podcasts?
So it often starts by accident. So for instance, they do a 3-part series. Every episode is 4 hours about how Warren Buffett created his wealth through different businesses and so on. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it all started at some point by taking a leap of faith, a very deep intuitive nudge. So for me, it's confirming what I am saying, but also seeing how all those businesses, even some who were created in the early 1900s, such as Louis Vuitton or Hermes, were coming from someone who was a visionary, just having this random idea and following through with that.
Oh, 100%. I can definitely see that happening. And as I was reflecting on all of the deep dives that I've watched about all these major brands, a lot of it has to do with intuition. So this is where we really get into it. The first question I have for you for the interview is, how would you define personal development, and where do you think intuition falls?
Personal development for me is personal actualization. It's a way to re-actualize yourself to who you are at this point in time. I really believe that we are cyclical as human beings and we go through the different cycle of life. And personal development is a way for us to actualize our belief, to actualize our thought, our action, and see what's possible. So that's how I define self-development. And for me, the link between self-development and intuition is through self-development, you accumulate new experiences and new knowledge that then you can use for your intuition to be sharpened. Because your intuition is based on this subconscious, these experiences, this knowledge that you have, that you tap into. It's kind of unprocessed data. And the more you read, the more you develop yourself, the more you self-actualize yourself, the more you're in tune with the groundbreaking intuitive nudge that you need.
Right. And do you think that exercising our intuition also contributes to our personal development in any way?
Yeah, completely. I totally believe that it's chicken and egg situation. You develop yourself, you tune your intuition, and then your intuition is guiding you through the next thing. The next things that you can tap into, the next things that you can learn, the next things that will be valuable for you to develop yourself. So it's like this beautiful momentum that is feeding each other. Your intuition feeds your self-development, your self-development feeds your intuition. So anyone who is staying in their zone of comfort are not going to develop themselves and are not going to harness their intuition to the full potential.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. But regardless, intuition is still a bit of an enigma. It still can't really quite be explained. So, what is your definition of what intuition is, especially in the context of business strategy?
Yes, thank you for asking this question because it's very important that we all agree on terms. So for me, intuition is a component of 4 dynamic elements. The first one, as I've mentioned, is your subconscious. So those are all the information that you've accumulated through your upbringing, through what you've done in the past, through the things that you've seen, kind of the Inception movie, what is in your mind and that you tap into without consciously making any effort to tap into it. So it's based on your subconscious. The second element is your experiences. So what I always say is trust your intuition if you have experience in that field. So in business, it means if you have experience working in marketing and then you want to tune in with your intuition for a marketing decision, please do so. But if you have no experience in finance, it's the first time you're looking at a P&L, profit and loss, don't trust your intuition for that. Reach out to someone who has experience in that space so then they can use their own intuition and help you with your P&L. The third element is your emotions. You need to be in tune with your emotions so that you can know what feels right and what feels wrong. We hear a lot about gut feeling, about heart expansion, when it's a great intuitive decision. So you need to be in tune with your emotions. So that's the third dimension of emotion. And the fourth one is your perceptions. How do you feel in the things that you can't explain? Because it's kind of, some people speak about the sixth sense, but we actually have 8 senses. So it's not the sixth sense, but it's like this ability to feel and know beyond what can be explained. And this is not spiritual or woo-woo. It's actually backed by neuroscience. Lots of research has been done in neuroscience in the last 10 years, proving that intuition exists with those 4 elements as a definition.
That's really well explained, that intuition is backed by subconsciousness and our experiences, emotions, perceptions as well. The next question I actually wanted to bring up was, in what situations should entrepreneurs make intuitive decisions rather than conscious, logical ones? Now, like we said before, intuition is very difficult to explain. It's a bit of an enigma. But it seems like there is a bit of a strategy to this, in where if you don't have that wealth of experience in a particular area, like you said before with finance, for example, you shouldn't be too intuitive about that.
Yes, thank you for asking this question because I am all about guiding entrepreneurs in tuning in more with their intuition to make decisions better, faster, that are more inclusive, and that will then lead to disruptive innovation. Yet, you need to make sure that you harness your intuition in the right space, in the right time. And that goes back to, do you have experience in that field? So if you want to create a business that is completely disrupting your industry and you've been working in that industry for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you can trust your intuition. You can do that. You know intuitively what customer wants. You don't need to spend hours analyzing data. You can tap into the unprocessed data that are within your intuition and guiding your intuition. So then you save time, and you're also doing some things that no one else is doing because they will look at the processed data, the data that are available, which may be outdated already, whereas you know the edge. So that's where I always tell the entrepreneurs that I help, have you been an expert in that space? Or is it a new space that you're stepping into? And if that is the case, then how can you surround yourself with team members, with advisor, with people on your board who actually have this experience and this expertise so that they can help you bypass all the time of looking for data? Because we know that a lot of the time, what has been proven by data is actually already outdated. So if you want to find your edge, you need to tap into this knowledge that is guided by intuition. And also, when you make those decisions based on intuition, no one else can have exactly the same idea because you went through your unique process. So it's very innovative.
Yeah. And what examples can you think of that we wouldn't have known, listeners wouldn't have known, of major companies seeing success because of intuitive decisions?
So Jeff Bezos openly speak about this example in the letter to shareholder in 2018. He speaks about how they launched Amazon Prime, which now everyone knows. But at the time when they launched Amazon Prime, it was highly disrupting an industry. It was a high risk and no data point were proving that it would be a success. And at the beginning, it was actually not really a success. But they pushed through, and he wrote it in this way. They pushed through based on intuition. He knew it would work despite every signal that was proven him wrong out there. He pushed through and it became a high success. And now how everyone uses Amazon every day to order things very quickly.
Mm-hmm. And so what are some of the other risks involved in using that intuitive approach in business strategy?
Very good question. So there are big risks, which is some people take the shortcut of, oh, Laetitia or someone else told me to trust my intuition for business strategy. So as I said, I'm going to do a big investment based on my intuition, but you've never done this investment before. It's something you have zero experience in. You have strictly no proof within yourself that it's going to work. And you're actually guided by your ego rather than your intuition. So that's a big risk that I've seen in some entrepreneurs who are just trusting their gut when actually it's not really their gut expressing it. It's more their ego or the fear of missing out on something. So this is a big risk, making decision when you don't know about this topic. So I've seen that in financial decision-making, in marketing decision-making, in rebranding decision-making, in new offering launch decision-making and things like that. So that's where I would highly encourage you, if you trust your intuition, to validate that you're actually an expert in that field.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of other questions should we be asking ourselves in order to identify whether we're being guided by our ego or FOMO, or whether it's really intuition?
Yes, it's a very good question. And actually, the way to know if it's your ego or if it's your intuition is taking a moment to connect with your emotions. So taking a step back, connecting with your emotion and feeling into what it's like when it's your intuition. When it's your intuition, very often you have this sense of peace, this sense of groundedness. If you look at, your feeling, you're not completely excited and you're not highly fearful and, feeling like, oh my goodness, I've put my egg all in the same basket. It's going to fail. You have this sense of peace. I described it as a sense of, that is coming from, I'm grounded, I know it, that's the answer you want to feel. If you are in a high emotional state or a very low emotional state, those kind of high spectrum feelings, it's not your intuition, it's something else. Maybe your ego, your fear, your anxiety, those kind of things guiding you. So make space to tune in and feel into that sense of groundedness, connectiveness, peacefulness.
I really like that.
Because that's how it sounds for me. And I know some people are very auditory, especially if they're listening to a podcast, they may be auditory. So they may be like, oh yes, I know this. And what I often do with my clients is first we start connecting with that inner compass, with that intuition. How does it feel for them when it's intuitively led? Because for some people, it may be a feeling in their gut. For some people, it may be a tingle in the fingers. For some people, it's, this kind of head expansion, like, you feel your crown tingling. For some people, it's your heartbeat expanding. It's very different. And each and every one of us have a different feeling. But very often in years and years of helping others tune in with their intuition, many of them said the really resonated.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that intuition is a skill that everyone can develop, or are some people just naturally better at it?
So 100% of us are intuitive. That has been backed by neuroscience and research and all of that. So 100% of us are intuitive. There is no doubt. Like 100% of us are capable of lifting 10 kilo. Can we all do that? Not necessarily. We need to train for that. Or maybe 50 kilo, maybe 10 I went too low, but like 50 kilo. Every human is able to use their intuitive muscle, yet it's about strengthening it, working with it every day so that it becomes stronger and stronger and stronger, and expanding it through other experiences. So starting with something that is a small decision so that you have this feedback loop to learn about it and expand it and trust it more and more. So to answer your question, yes, everyone is capable of it. Are some of us more in tune with their intuition than others? Definitely. I grew up in a family that is a family of healers in the south of France, and I have always been taught to trust my intuition. So yes, I've developed this from my early childhood. What I've noticed with some of my clients is they've been actually told the opposite. Don't trust yourself. Don't trust your intuition. Don't trust your gut. So we have way more unlearning to relearn and connect with it, but they're all then capable of doing it through maybe a bit more work, but we're all capable of trusting our own intuition. It's about reclaiming this power that you have all within you and strengthening that muscle every single day.
So, what are some practices that would be useful in strengthening our intuition?
So the first practice that I always tell everyone is making space to listen to your intuition. Everything starts with space. If you don't have the space, if you're always running around and you don't sit with yourself to ask yourself those questions, whatever question it can be, you can start with a small question, which is, what do I feel like eating today? And then you connect with that moment of silence and that feeling of ness. And then you go and you trust that feeling around, okay, I'm feeling like eating cauliflower today. So do that thing because your body needs it. Again, around intuitive eating, it's quite controversial because I speak about intuitive eating around wholesome food. If you feel like eating an ice cream, this is not your intuition, right? It's the sugars that they put on the ice cream. So here I'm talking about a cauliflower or something that is healthy, right? But this is, you can start by making space for those moments rather than living on autopilot and just doing that thing that you always do on your day-to-day life. Start connecting with it and making that space. And why do I say start with a small decision that you make on a day-to-day basis? Because if you prove yourself that your intuition is serving you in those moments, then you're ready to expand to bigger decision. I personally make massive decisions in my life and in my business based on my intuition. But I am 40 and it's been 40 years of working with my intuition rather than against it. So I'm highly trained and I'm an expert at leveraging my intuition for those decisions. But if you're listening to this and you're just starting out, start with something small. Start with a decision around what do you feel like starting to do today in your business that will move the needle. And rather than looking through your to-do list and so on, just tune in, make the space, take a few deep breaths and be like, okay, this is actually outreaching to that person for this funding is the best thing to do. So do that thing.
Right. And a lot of executives, managers, and even business press articles do vouch for intuitive decisions in business. But despite that value that it clearly holds, there are some journal articles that suggest that intuition can be a troublesome decision-making tool. So in business, what tactics would you suggest employing to support intuitive judgments?
Thank you for asking this question. And yes, it's more and more mainstream that intuition is powerful. There is more and more research, like recently Deloitte proved that trusting your intuition in decision making is generating more profits. The leaders that says being intuitive generate more profit for the business. They've proven also that is reducing bias and fostering more integration and diverse perspective in corporate and all of that. So I'm really like, everything is proving that we need to use our intuition more, yet a lot of people resist to that. So the way to really use your judgment and use your intuition in the right way is first of all checking in with how are you feeling when you make that intuitive decision. If you are in a state of high stress, if you are in a boardroom and it's the first time you're entering the boardroom, don't trust your intuition in that moment. Use your intuition in a moment where you are not in high stress, you are actually very grounded, and you've been in that boardroom many times, and then you can answer that question that they are asking you, and they want the answer straight away based on your intuition. So those are the things that I really want to say is knowing how you feel, connecting with that. Have you been there before? Can you trust yourself to answer that? And then is it something that is very low probability? If it's very low probability and it's more your gambling brain that is telling you, let's do that, don't trust your intuition in those moments because intuition is not going to bypass the things that are very low probability, it is going to help you find an edge. But it's not about gambling and pushing these numbers. There is this beautiful story about the Monaco roulette where they were a red, and then for 27 times it was a black coming, and everyone would bet on the red because they're like, it's impossible that it's, a black is again going to come, a black is again going to come. But that day, the Monaco casino made millions of dollars because people were saying, oh, I trust my intuition. No, you're not trusting your intuition here. You're gambling. You're trusting data and probability rather than your intuition.
That sounds like it would really help as well to distinguish intuition from impulse.
Yes.
Whenever you're making critical business decisions.
Yes.
But are there any specific industries or scenarios wherein intuition plays a particularly significant role?
Yes. So in the startup world, and I have a few clients who openly shared about this, and I have a LinkedIn article about this, where I shared about the big business owner who say openly how they trusted their intuition, from Steve Jobs, Sarah Blakely, from Spank, or, Jeff Bezos, or the founder of Virgin, who his name is not coming right now in my head, even though he's Richard Branson. I was like,
yeah.
well, how can I not name him? And then I have the startup and scale-ups that I have supported. So for example, Prop Hero, which is a startup that is AI powered for you to invest in property, in 3-click and all of that. And I've helped them through their strategy, and I've helped their CEO trust his intuition for making decisions. So what they did is within a few months of starting and cracking the Australian market, he was like, I'm ready to go to Indonesia and take over the Bali market, and then the Spanish market, and then the UK market. It doesn't make sense. It's too quick. If you look at data, you're like, okay, a lot of startups expand too quickly and then they fail. But now, nearly 2.5 years down the track, they're generating 25 million in turnover a year. I'm sharing that because they shared it openly on an article. So it was all led by intuition. And then through the first expansion, they used that as a blueprint to expand in other countries and so on. But it was firstly led by intuition of the founder being like, I have worked in strategy in the past. I know that expanding in other country, when you have those fundamentals, it's going to work. And I'm going to trust that nudge that I have. And I was supporting him through that journey of bypassing what the data may say, but using the unprocessed data, which were based on his own experience, his own subconscious, his own emotions and perceptions. And it's a groundbreaking success.
That's fantastic. And it's so amazing that it's just fascinating to me that intuition is just basically unprocessed data that's based on experiences and is able to turn some businesses into major successes. Can you share some examples of maybe lesser known solo entrepreneurs who have successfully integrated their intuition into business strategies as well with their various wealths of experiences?
Yes, for sure. So in my book, Light It, How to Trust Your Intuition and Build a Thriving Business, actually, I use the example of solopreneur in this book because initially I wrote that book for the solopreneur, not the big firm that I'm helping through their leader, or the small business and startups that I'm helping, because I wanted to make this accessible to everyone. So buying a book for $20 or getting access to it for free now on Spotify as audiobook, I was like, then they can be inspired with solopreneur experiences and stories. And I share a story in that book of a renowned photographer who during COVID lost all of her income. So she was photographing renowned actors, speakers, all of that in Australia, but she lost all of her income. And she's been doing that for decades, right? So she intuitively reached out to me because she heard about me and she was like, you need to help me develop a new revenue stream. So what we did is we tune in. I helped her tune in with her intuition. And what is that new revenue stream looking like? And from there, we developed a community for her to teach other her skill set that she had that was unused at this time during COVID because she couldn't go and do all those things, and teaching it to other people. And from there, she created a thriving community, a multiple 6-figure revenue stream. She grew her audience, all of that. But it started from a whisper in her heart, in her emotion. Her name is Jade Wan. She's one of the case study in my book. So it's just how, as a solopreneur, it is possible to create a thriving business if you're willing to listen to those moments of whisper that you need to make space for.
Yeah, that's a really, really great story and really inspiring too. Now, what are some of the common misconceptions about using intuition in business strategies that people should be aware of?
Yes. So a lot of people think that intuition is just emotions. So they're like, don't trust your intuition, otherwise you're running your business only through emotions. But as I said, I shared with you the 4 pillar in my own definition of intuition, and emotion is only 1 out of 4 pillar. So it's like seeing a chair on 4 legs. It's only 1 leg that is emotion. So reducing intuition to emotions is not the right way to see it. So that's the first mistake that I see. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm not going to trust my intuition because it's just based on emotion. No, it's not. So trust your intuition. Then the second mistake that I see is a lot of people are like, oh, intuition is spiritual. And I'm not a spiritual person. No, intuition is not just spirituality. It's not just this approach that we're all connected and we're all knowing about the whisper of our soul and all of that. No, intuition is backed by neuroscience, is proven by research. So yes, there is a dimension if you want to add a 5 pillar to the definition, which can be spiritual and connectiveness with the universe, with the wisdom around us, all of that which comes from more ancient and traditional cultures, which I believed in, but I'm not including it in my definition because otherwise a lot of people will tune out. They'll be like, oh no, it's spiritual, so I'm not tuning in. There's actually 4 other components that are rational for you to use your intuition.
Yeah.
And the third,
Sorry.
the third
Go ahead.
misconception is I'm not intuitive. No. As I said, 100% of us are intuitive. You're not in tune with your intuition yet, but you are intuitive.
And so, in your experience, what are the key challenges that entrepreneurs face when they're trying to incorporate their intuition into their business strategy? How can they overcome these?
So the main challenges that they have is no one told them before that intuition and strategy can be together. They think that is one versus the other. You know, it's like what we say about art versus science. But it's actually together that it's more beautiful. And I really believe that strategy and intuition together will give you the edge. So a lot of entrepreneurs have a challenge around, oh, no. If I'm an entrepreneur, I need to prove everything with a clear strategy, clear data. No, as an entrepreneur, many times you cannot explain your decision forwards. You will be able to explain it backwards. After you made it, after you went through it, then you can explain. You can be like, oh yeah, I've done that because. So that's a big challenge. They limit themselves through that. So how to overcome this is actually by making sure you surround yourself with investors, team members, directors, advisors that know that you're ready to step into being more of an intuitive leader, more of an intuitive entrepreneur, and making sure that they all agree to that. So then they're not going to challenge each decision that you're making based on, do you have the data to back this? What is the low revenue model looking like for this? Show me the business plan. Because there are some moments where you're really doing this, like Jeff Bezos described when they launched Amazon Prime, where it's like, I know the market. I know the need. My intuition is telling me this is the next best thing that we can do. And they just did it.
Right. And in a lot of cases, there's often a small window of opportunity there where if you over explain yourself with data and you spend however amount of months to find the data, come up like do a research group, like a focus group or something like that, and you put it all out so that everyone's on the same page as you and you can clearly prove that this will work, by then someone else might have already taken that opportunity up. So it makes a lot of sense when you put intuition in the perspective of this is unprocessed data based on a wealth of experience that someone already has, along with various other pillars. So that's been such an insightful conversation to have with you, and I learned so much there. The next section that we're going into is the practices and habits section. And the first question I'd love to ask you is, what is a habit that you practice yourself to manage your intuition?
So, as we said, intuition is unprocessed data, it's subconscious and all of that. A practice that I have every day is when I wake up, journaling. Writing down on my journal 3 pages, which is inspired from the Artist Way practice. 3 pages. Why is that? Because when you wake up, you're still in that state where your subconscious is quite present. You haven't absorbed anything. I don't look at my phone when I wake up. I go take my journal and I write 3 pages. And that then I extract from it something that will be my focus during that day, something that requires my attention. And that's how a few weeks ago, I had an amazing business idea, a new business that I'm birthing at the moment, that I'm creating. It came through that process. Everything that I create in my business, every idea that I have for my clients as their business doula and helping them have the new next best idea, revenue stream, and all of that comes from that state of in between. You wake up, you haven't had anything, coffee, drink, nothing. Just wake up, you drag yourself into your armchair and you start writing for 3 pages, whatever comes to you. And then from there, you have nuggets of gold. So that's a gold practice for me.
That is incredibly disciplined. Are there any days where you just go, oh, I really do not want to drag myself out and write 3 pages worth of subconsciousness? Are there any days like that for you?
Yes, definitely. But I push through because that's
Wow.
discipline. And there is power in discipline. I know a lot of people see discipline as something that is bad, but actually having discipline with your own habits, especially when it's something that is gold mine for you, is actually very helpful. And the day I don't want to do it are actually the best day. It's just those days where maybe I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm not feeling really myself today. But those days I'm actually processing emotions. I'm actually processing information. That needed to be processed. It's very cathartic. I don't have every day the next best idea. Sometimes it's just about processing a feeling or processing something that happened during the day before or in my dream. And there is power working with your dream as well, with this conscious state of dreaming, lucid dreaming and all of that. So yes, of course, I have days where I don't want to do it, but I still do it.
I really like the point you made about the days that you don't want to do it are the best days for it, because you're likely processing the information and the emotions in your mind, and therefore you have this urge not to do it, but that's when you need to do it the most. But for those people who find difficulty in just churning out 3 pages right when they wake up, God forbid they don't even find it easy at all doing it like at any point in the day, would 1 page suffice?
So you ask me, what do I do? But then there are so many other rituals that one can do, right? I have a lot of clients where I'm like, this is one approach, this is another approach, and then they pick and take the one that resonates. So what I start doing with my clients is I rarely share what is my own practice, but you ask me my own practice because 3 pages a day can be really daunting for many people. So what I tell them is, what is something that makes you access a state of flow, a state where you're really connected with your own creativity, with your own intuition, with your own genius. And for some of them, it's when I'm cooking. For some of them, it's when I'm dancing. For some of them, it's when I'm playing guitar. Some of them, it's walking my dog. For some of them, it's singing. And then we harness that and we make it a daily habit to enter that state and connect with their intuition in that state so that they can bring it with joy rather than chores. But it still takes discipline because they need to do it every day. If you don't do it every day, it's like a muscle, like going to the gym and lifting those 10, 15, 20 kilos every day. You need to do that, or training for a marathon. You need to run every day. So that's what intuition is, a muscle.
Hi, thank you so much for sharing that with us. I learned a lot from you, and it's incredible to hear about your very, very disciplined practice when it comes to strengthening your intuition. I feel like I have to do that at some point as well. I used to actually journal my dreams because
Yeah.
I kind of looked into my dreams to figure out, like, not very intensely, like what the exact meaning of it is, because I don't believe that these finer details have specific meanings to them, but the overarching theme of certain dreams can tell you a bit about your current emotional states. So that's probably something that I have to really get disciplined about, because I have like 3 dreams a day and I've just completely stopped journaling them. So maybe that's something that I can do. What do you think?
Yes, yes. Especially working in with your dream is actually accessing straight away your subconscious. So you're basically accessing one element of your intuition that is highly powerful. So yes, please keep doing that. I have a journal by my bedside table. When I wake up in the middle of the night, sometimes I draw something, and this is very powerful because then you go back to it, and maybe it takes you a few months to remember that thing. But when you remember it, you have this sense of clarity and knowing and this feeling that this is what you're meant to be doing now.
Yeah. That's all so fascinating to me. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Now we're moving on to the open mic section, and this is your opportunity to talk about anything that you're passionate about, and it doesn't have to be related to the topic at all. So the floor is yours. Take it away.
Great. Thank you so much. So I am really passionate about bringing more women in leadership and in leaning into the table, having their seat at the table. And so I have been for a very long time mentoring new leaders. So when I was a general manager in Telstra, I would mentor new leaders and female leader. Through my own business now, I have this community of women entrepreneurs to help them grow, to help them learn from each other. So I have this fascination for the village, bringing back the village, bringing back the power of the community, bringing back those circular practices. So I've actually put an application for South by Southwest in Sydney around the circular leadership and how sitting in circle as women rather than a rectangular table that is very masculine and, you have those corner and so on. How can we bring again the circular table and this circle and this ability for everyone to actually share at the same level without a hierarchy, each of us sharing our perspective and ideas and listening deeply so that every leader can grow and learn from someone else. So that's a big passion of mine. So I'm, of course, running workshop, keynote, and all that about this. But that's really something that, and also beyond the conversations that you have, this is also the ability, of course, to connect with your intuition. But that's something that I'm very passionate about. I want to see more women in leadership. I want to see more women taking the mic and leading the stage. I want to see more women leading big firms because we know that this is needed. So yes, I'm doing everything I can to empower women in leadership and in business.
I love the idea of the circular table as well. I mean, historically and in musical groups, people practice and stand
Yes, in circle.
in a circle because that they can hear each other better and they
Yes,
work as a team better.
yes,
And yeah, and the sound just bounces off better, which I guess in an office setting or a business setting, it's a bit more metaphorical than actual, like, acoustically, but I feel like it works.
it does. And that's what I was doing even when I was a general manager in Telstra. I would remove all the table and make everyone sit in circles. So take the chairs and sit in circle. Because as you said, you hear each other better, but you also see each other better. And there is not, one who is at the top of the table and one who is on the other side on a corner or doesn't fit on the rectangular table. So sitting, behind someone else, which all of that can actually create a power dynamic. And often you will see the woman sitting away from the table.
Mm-hmm.
And I want them to have their seat at the table.
Yeah, it sounds so arbitrary, but I feel like even just that small change makes such a huge difference in the messages that you're conveying in your teams. So that sounds like an incredible cause to be advocating for, and I wish you all the best in that. I hope to see that around and making big changes and waves in the industries. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us and for spending your time with us today. If our listeners want to find out more about you and what you do, where can they go?
So as you're already listening to a podcast, you can go ahead on your podcast platform and search for the Essential Shift podcast, where I share my insights and welcome guests as well. Or you can go on my website, www.essentialshift.co, co for community. Or you can find me on Instagram, essential.shift. I am on LinkedIn under my name. And you can also start listening to my audiobook, which is available for free on Spotify Premium, Light It, How to Trust Your Intuition and Build a Thriving Business, or you can buy your own copy anywhere online. Thank you so much for having me.
Amazing. We'll link those in the show notes. And before we end off, Laetitia, do you have any last words of wisdom that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I'd like you to know that there is magic in the thing you avoid doing. So if you avoid trusting your intuition today, there is magic in it. If you avoid sitting in silence, there is magic in it. So what are you avoiding to do, and how might you connect with that and harness the magic?
Those are some wise words indeed. Thank you for joining us once again, Laetitia. And thank you everyone for tuning in. We hope you learned a little bit more about intuition and how to harness and strengthen it as well. We'll catch you in the next episode. You've been listening to the Self-Improvement Atlas, the Personal Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. For more episodes like this from 10 different life management perspectives, search LMSL on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts, so you can get updated on everything we have to offer. We have a wide range of topics readily available for you to check out. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, as it helps us grow and bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website at pe.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Marie Stella. Thanks for tuning in.